So for week 3, we're going to do a coding challenge. Now, these challenges are definitely a part of this course, and in this case, I'm going to have you do 2 challenges. And along the way, we're going to talk about an update to the instruction file. I spent some time actually with a student last week, and in watching that student work through my instruction, I realized my instruction was due for a upgrade. And with the ability now to have AI conversations, I actually put my instruction in my favorite Gen AI, which is Gemini, and I had a whole conversation about that, the way that instruction was provided. And what I realized is that and this was great feedback I got, was that we call it the cognitive load, the amount of just things you had to keep in your mind to go through the work can be overwhelming, and that's not the idea. Now, in the process of this chat session that I had, we, and I honestly mean we, because together with Gemini and myself, we rewrote that instruction. Now, what that means is the instruction now file is a little bit longer. But I hope, and I just want you to know this, and that's why I'm going over it here too, is to expose you to the new kind of way the instructions are going to be written, and you're going to hit that in your querying part 4. Okay, so in this case, here's the instruction file. Go ahead and check it out. Have it open. I also have my code space open. I've already done the first part, so I'll just show you what that looks like. So in this case, you're going to create a new file. Okay, so w3-q.sql. So now we have a query file specifically for attendance, okay, and it's done in your querying folder. So if you want to know what that looks like, in this querying folder, you create a file. So remember, there's, you're creating files within folders. The key to create in the right place is actually being in the right location. Right? So if I was to do it out here, then it would create it in that root, and that's not what you want. So just know, where are you at currently, and then which one are you clicking. So you're creating a new file, and that's the name of the file. Okay, so now in there, right, and now don't manually copy the old one, because I've added some content here, and so you would take this content and paste it in, and ultimately it would look like this. Okay, so it's a little bit abbreviated. It says, hey, bash here is just for reference. It does update where the proof of work is going to go. Okay, now in the future, I may just say update your proof of work to be this. But for this particular step, I'm actually going to have you copy this as new, and you'll do the same thing for querying part 4. Now, this is something that can get a little bit tricky in understanding the two. So open your terminal. So in this case, how do you open a terminal? First, you have to have this interface open, right? So if you're, again, this is a little bit of a review, but not a problem. New terminal. Okay. Now you can do, once you're in here, you can also just add a terminal. So the first terminal, I would call the SQLite terminal. Now in this case, I've already started the command that you're going to run it. So ultimately, and I'll show you this in the instruction, right? You navigate to the querying folder. Now I've shown you 2 ways to do that, right? So over here, like, I'll just simulate the idea here, right? So now this is a third one. It's just telling you how to do this. And I like to just do it on the command, right, line. But you can also right click, open an integrated terminal, and then you run SQLite. Now that's where I've given you the command. You could just paste it, long list. Now next week we'll have a different database, so just know that that will change. So now once you do that, okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and drop that one, then the name of the terminal in the listing will change. So, and that's why I say terminal 1. Now if you have this, flipped, just know which one you have as terminal 1. For me, it's the SQLite, and this is where you're writing queries, right? And then, and this shows you, right? This is where you're interactively. So in this case, right, we're writing queries in here. Now, I do like to. Now, the dot mode box is done when you do the proof of work, but I always like to do it here as well. Okay, so now, right, start your second one, and this is where you'll do your get and your work and your proof of work commands. Okay, so terminal 2, bash to complete these things. Okay, so now you're going to do in your README file, you're going to add this. Okay, now I could just copy it. I could come over here. I may have already done this in another setup. Yep, I did this. Okay, so that's your in your README, which by the way, the readme.md is the only file. Typically, we make all uppercase. Extensions like MD for Markdown are always lowercase. I think that's always. Now once you do that, you're ready to do your first commit. Okay, now I don't in the instruction because at this point we've done it several times. So if you need to remember how to do that, in your repos, I've made you set up that git help, and that will remind you if you're not sure, right? So in here, but the important thing is to understand you're going to do this in your second terminal. So you come over here because now that you have that, right? Git, and actually it always is good to do git status to know, oh yeah, you know what, that makes sense. I've modified that file. So git add star, git commit -m, right? And this is where you want to use the commits I provide, right? Do you have to have syntactically? No, as long as the content of what that is, cool. Now at this point, I'm going to continue working. Do I have to do the git push? No, because I am going to, and here I can just type clear, right? So you can if you want, you're totally free to do that. So now we're into actually the file, the challenge itself. So I've given you, your first challenge is your top rated books. Okay, so this is just more experience with some of the SQL commands we learned last week. Right? And you can read through the context, really good to do. It actually tells you what columns you're going to you'll need and what the results should look like. And now I've given you some, make sure you have a print statement. I actually tell you what columns to select. In this case, you're going to sort the results and the highest ratings appear at the top so that they do. And then ensure only 5 rows displayed. So this is what it should look like when you get the correct answer. So now your job is to go and write your query. Okay, so in here, in my SQL, right, I would write, and I'm going to go ahead and close this for a second. I would write what I think is the requirements. Let's say, and I'm not going to write it here because that's your job. I'm just going to, because I did give you, in this case, what columns you're going to need. Now I'm going to put, and again, this is not the correct, okay, long list. Okay, that's the table. And I'm going to end it with a semicolon. Oh yeah, it's like, okay. Oh yeah, what did I do there? Right? So, and in this case, you're kind of, this is the idea of, oh yeah, so did I, right? And let me just, and if I'm not sure, and this is the other thing. So it's like, why did that comma error right here? And I could go back and look at, oh yeah, what did Rio say? It was rating. Okay, so that's, and I would use maybe my up arrow. I would come here, right? Oh yeah, okay, now I got the correct output. And this is the idea of practicing your SQL. Okay, so now that I'm like, okay, now this is not the correct output for what's required. I'm just giving you the process because I want you to understand the importance of doing the workflow in the process that I described. Okay, so I just did this. We coded on the SQL terminal, and then once you, so write and refine your query in the terminal until it matches the expected results. Now, if you don't get the results, I give you an option. Hang on, I'll show you that in a minute. Now, once you do get it, you copy your final query. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to copy my final query. Now I could roll up, or I could just come here. I could select this. Okay, I'm going to go over here. And what else do I need? I also need a dot print, right? So I'm going to, I click something here, dot print, and then code challenge 1. Okay. Now, so now that I have that, now I'm going to go over to my proof of work, because this is the thing. You don't do the proof of work until you have it inside your query file. Okay. Come over and remember, where do you do your proof of work, right? So in this case, right? Oh, let me cover this before I move on. So if you don't get the correct output, and even if you do, I forgot this, so I'm glad I came back. You know, you are going to give me also some content in your README file. You know, confirm that you got the expected output, right? And then if you if you could not get the correct output, describe the approaches you tried and where you got stuck and include your final query. So you need to have a query you wrote, even if you didn't get there. And what you get points for is telling me what you tried, right? And again, I'm going to say this, AI is discouraged here because this is where you're building your problem-solving muscle. Okay, so let me just do that step before I move on. So I should have kept that open. And one of the things I like to do is I like to open this to the side so I always have it open. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down to this. Like this would be something like I didn't get the results. Here's what I tried, or I got the correct results and it was fun. Okay, now I've gotten that part. So now I'm ready to do my proof of work. So now let's do this, right? Now I could copy this, but remember in your file, this is why I've also always provided this. And remember, your proof of work is showing what the output you got and it's outputted to a file so I can look at it. And you always do them on your bash. You can paste that in, and then what will happen is you'll get a new text file, okay, that has that output. Now at this point, and let's come back here, it's really important to commit your work, because what I look for on your commits is did you have the correct notes and or SQL, right? And is all that in that commit. So now I'm going to do in terminal 2, I'm going to do another commit. Okay, so I'm going to do git add start. Now remember, I said it, but I didn't show you. Commit, right? Code challenge 1. Uh-oh. Oh, yeah. And this is where, helps when you MIT. Okay, cool. So now I have that. Notice all that goes away and now it's clean. Now I haven't pushed yet because I'm going to continue working. Okay, so now I'm going to do my second one. And this is where in the instruction it says stop and clean up. Before moving on, comment out the queries you wrote. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to select these two, right? Boom, right? And now what I'm doing here is, for me it's Mac, but I think on Windows it'd be Windows /. That is the hotkey or the key combination, not hotkey, but to actually do that. So now you're going to write your second one. Okay, so now you go back to here, write your second one. So let's go back and read now the second code challenge, right? So let's go back here. So now we're going to do another one. So code challenge 2 is the Goldilocks length. We want books that are between just that right spot between 2 and 300 as far as pages. So we learned how to do that. There's an SQL command we have. And so in this case, right, I'm not going to spend too much more time because I hope you get the idea. But this is where you would then write, right? Now in this case we're going to do title, and what do we need? And again, in the instruction I show you, right, we need pages. Cool, right? Pages from long list. Okay, cool. So then that shows me my pages. Cool. Now I'm just going to go ahead and in here, and I'm just, again, the idea is get the correct output on the terminal. And I'm going to uncomment this just to have it, right? And I say in here, it's not the correct SQL, okay? So in this case now that I have the correct output and I know it, I have copied my query into my file. What do? Right? So if you're not sure here, right, well, and this gives you what that output should look like, and this is where you've coded on the SQL, and again, in your README file, tell me, right? So before you do this, now that you have it, come back here, right? Go to your README file, right? And then, oh, I already have it up. That's right. Okay, so actually let's do this. So this will be good. So we'll say code challenge 1. It's early. Okay, and then we'll add another at the end of this for code challenge 2. Okay, so now I just added something that wasn't in the instruction file. Okay, so I'm just giving you, like I try not to do that, but sometimes I do. So now once you get that, modify that content to say here, right? What did you get the correct output? If you didn't, what did you try? Okay, because the idea here is actually to try. Now next week we'll learn how to capture that effort, because we'll call that effort. You tried to get it done. Here's the queries I wrote. It didn't maybe create the right output, but I did try. Okay, all right, so now we do the proof of work, right? So now we can come back over here, right? So I've got the content, I've got this. Okay, so I'm going to up arrow here, because I have that in my, and up arrowing just filters you through all the commands you've done. So now I can run that. So now my proof of work will have both of those, right? Both of those challenges content out there. Okay, again, not the correct output, right? And now I do my commit. Okay, so now I'm not going to go through that because that's, well, actually I am. And there's a reason I am going to at this point. I'm going to actually up arrow here, because I'm going to do git add. I'm going to go git commit, so code challenge 2, okay? And then now I'm actually going to do, because I'm finished, right? Git push. And actually I want to do this for the reason I'm about to tell you, okay? So in here, right, so once you commit, right, there's nothing you have to submit. Now this is different than the querying part 4. You do have to submit your commit history, but I want to show you that again because some of you missed that last time, right? So I will as part of my review. So look at this. So 80 points comes from your output here. So it's why it's really important to follow the process that I have here, and we're just getting good muscle memory. Okay, now at this point I know I'm done here, and I would go ahead and stop my code space, but what I want to show you is over here. So now in GitHub, right, so in my GitHub repo, right, I would go to my querying, and then in the querying I'm going to look at my history. So what I'm going to see in my history is I'm going to see those 2 code challenges commit, and when I grade this, here's what I look for. I look for, right, did you add the content? Right? Do you have the proof of work, right? And in this case, do I see the queries that you wrote? So this is what I look for: the queries that you wrote, the proof of work, and the update to here. So when I grade that work, if all that's there, that's what I consider a good commit, or that's how I grade a commit is 100%. And each one of them have to contain each piece of what's required. Now sometimes there may only be notes you're taking. Sometimes there may be queries and notes. Okay, so that's how I look at that. So coming back here. Okay, so now you've worked through that, right? You're going to reply. Okay, so first in your reply, tell us about your experience of doing these challenges. Do not share your queries, and ask for help if needed. It's really okay it's actually important to ask for help. It's like, you know what, I almost got it. And you might tell them what you've tried. Now that's where if you didn't get the correct output, it's probably fine to share your SQL, but if you don't, because that would just make it easier for somebody else to see it. And we're all human. Sometimes when we see the answer, we just go and use it. And that's not the idea. Like how long, and this might be something else in your reply, right? Were you able to get the correct? I'm just giving you some suggestions here. How long did it take you to get the correct output? How long did you try to get it? And how did you approach the challenge, right? These are all good things to think about. Am I discouraging of AI? Okay, so I hope this helps you out. This is 20 points. And I require only one reply, so it needs to be substantive to the posts that they had. And one sentence does not cut it to, and really it's maybe one sentence that is substantive, meaning you really read their comment and made a substantive reply. You actually said something very relevant to what they're talking about to continue the conversation. Okay, I hope this helps you out. Again, give this the effort it needs, and then this will set you up for what you're going to see in the new querying part 4 instructions.